Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. We're going to have everybody come on in the room. Come on in the room. We're going to get the program started. I would sing "Come on in the room," but then everyone would leave, and that would defeat the purpose of tonight.
Hi, my name is Elijah. I'm in 12th grade. I've been at McKinley for multiple years. I didn't have the resources I needed. Nobody was really helping me towards graduation. I was in school by myself. It was like 4 or 5 kids, 6 kids, 7 kids. If it was a good day, it would be like 6, 7 kids. But most of the time, it'd be like 4 or 5 kids. I'm the only one in class. So almost like that school sets you up for failure. They give you work that's not your grade level. Then they don't help you get into college. Then when they do try to help you get into college, they try to tell you can't get into your game college and then get you into like community college or something like that. One thing I really don't like about McKinley is how they kind of like try to seek out the trouble. Like they'll try to provoke you or say things that they know will make you upset, and then they'll call the police or they'll put you in a restraint. It felt like a prison.
Hi, my name is Edith Bazil. I am a former Boston Public Schools special education teacher and administrator, and currently work as Elijah's advocate. We have a high school that he attended that has no gym, no cafeteria, no science labs, and no library.
We had Chromebooks, but only time we used our Chromebooks was during lunch, and that would be for like YouTube or whatever. We wouldn't use it for actual classwork.
Our students who are at the McKinley are attending high schools that don't have extracurricular activities, athletics, internships.
For gym, we would sit downstairs in the basement gym room. Like it wasn't a real gym. They had probably a couple workout equipment, but they were all broken.
There are only 139 students and 112 staff with a budget of $15 million a year. And this is the type of education that these students are getting. So it's not money, it's having the will to educate these students and do what is the right thing to do for them.
I passed all of my MCAS first try, but even after I did that to try and prove to them that I had the ability to do the work, they were still giving me 4th, 5th, 6th grade papers.
The challenge was to have the school see him in the way that he sees himself. And when he said he wanted to go to Berklee School of Music, in the IEP team meeting, one of the staff members, the guidance counselor, said to him,
"Oh, you'll never get in." It's hard to see a school and a system that like really does not want to see you succeed. They want to see you fail. Like, they don't want to set you up to have a great future. Literally everybody that graduated last year, all the seniors that I was friends with, most of them are in jail.
And so what we need advocacy to change the infrastructure from a school to prison pipeline, because students at the McKinley schools cumulatively are sent to DYS more than any of the over 100 schools in the district.
The police will come to the school before they go to the house. Like, most of the kids that go to the school that has been arrested in that school, it was a school arrest.
When students like Elijah are in the custody of DCF, they have a higher incidence of being segregated into a school like the McKinley. McKinley is a therapeutic school for students who have IEPs for emotional impairment. However, the services that they need are not there. That is the school to prison pipeline. So as you can see with Black and brown students, the district seeing them as being capable, especially when they have an IEP, is work that needs to continue. Advocacy is so critically important. Self-advocacy in students is a critical skill that we have to help them develop.
And that's another thing too I really appreciate youth for, is because at first I did not advocate for myself at all.
Now he has the tools and strategies to push back. But trying to change this system that is really designed not to address the true academic and socio-emotional needs of students is a heavy lift. So in Elijah's senior year, he decided he was not going back to the McKinley. So he's at an alternative school, which is not perfect. but there are some opportunities that exist there that did not exist at his previous school. They are still not helping him with his college aspirations in his senior year, and so we still have continuing struggles.
My dream is to become a music producer and make it big in the music industry. My dream college is Berkeley. When I was at McKinley, they told me I would never make it there. Then I met Edith, and she told me, never say never, and we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna get you into Berkeley.
And that's why advocacy is so needed right now for students like Elijah at the McKinley School, within Boston Public Schools, but also across the entire Commonwealth. So they have hope for the future, so they can take advantage of the equalizing opportunity that a high quality education has in accessing what society has to offer. Elijah can offer a lot to society. He just needs the opportunity.
Hi, I'm Elijah. Thank you for listening to my story. I want to thank Edith and all of the other advocates in this room and elsewhere who are fighting for the educational rights of children and youth. And thank you to everyone here for your support of the Youth Advocacy Foundation.
All right, let's give Elijah another hand, because it is not easy to tell your story and to get up in a room full of folks such as yourself. So amazing, amazing story there, Elijah. And of course, the amazing work that Edith has been doing, but we will hear from Edith later on during our panel discussion. Welcome to you all to the 23rd annual spring celebration of the Youth Advocacy Foundation, highlighting the 70th anniversary of the landmark Supreme Court decision, Brown versus the Board of Education. 70 years. I'm Crystal Haynes, and I am just so honored to both be your host and then panel moderator for tonight's event. But that all comes later. I expect that you all are already aware of the work that YAF does on behalf of kids in Massachusetts, since you're here tonight in this beautiful room in Cambridge. Tonight will be a reminder and a celebration of what we have accomplished and a look forward at our goals in FY25. And by we, I mean everybody in this room. We'll have a chance to honor a community organization, an individual champion of justice, and an incredible pro bono organization and attorney. You will hear a panel on how far we have or have not come in those 70 years since the Brown decision. And you will hear two of our clients, and finally our favorite poet, Alondra Bobadilla. And I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, but I'm sure she can, and she will blow your socks off. Of course, there will be a chance for you to support the work of YAF should you be moved, and I'm going to tell you, you will be moved tonight, so get those checkbooks ready. Throughout the night, I'll be reminding you that you can keep bidding on our fabulous silent auction items using your personalized bidding link, and there are still some raffle tickets available for that amazing bike. So if you are interested in that, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and someone on staff will come by and sell you a raffle ticket. And the chances are good because we haven't sold them out. So it means the chances are good. The auction for items will close about 10 minutes after our program is over, and you can bid on the rest of those items until 5 p.m. tomorrow. And for those of you watching our live stream, welcome. Where's the camera? Welcome to you at home. You can also participate in our auction by clicking the link below the screen. So we've got the housekeeping. Everybody remember all the directions here. Before I introduce our first speaker, let me just say a word or two about why I'm so happy to be your MC for tonight. I have reported on equity in education for almost 10 years that I have been in Boston, half of my 20-year career in broadcast journalism in both here in Massachusetts and in Connecticut. I actually first met Edith, who you saw in the video, and of course she's on the YAF board, when I was doing a series on equity in education in Massachusetts, talking about the disparate outcomes of Black and brown boys, the access to education for kids with any sort of disability or learning difference, and of course, the teacher diversity or lack thereof numbers in Massachusetts. And I have Edith to thank for that Emmy Award sitting on my bookshelf at home. So I appreciate her, and I appreciate the work of everyone in this room. Not just because of the award, but that was nice. But but because every day you wake up and you make a difference in the lives of young people who a lot of folks counted out and knocked down every day. But we're not doing that here tonight. We are going to raise up their voices, and we're going to raise up the work being done by YAF and its partners. So, shall we get going? All right. Now, I am pleased to call to the stage Ducci Gonzalez, the chair of the board of YAF, and the Deputy General Counsel and Director of YAD, the Youth Advocacy Division of the Committee for Public Counsel Services, or CPCS. And Ducci will be recognizing those who made this event possible, and also will announce the winner of our Community Justice Award.
Thank you all. It is so great to see you all here today. I'm so happy to be here tonight with all of you at the 23rd annual YAF celebration. All right, y'all, it is an exciting time at YAF. Over the last year, YAF has been able to launch new initiatives to continue our critical work to disrupt the cradle-to-prison pipeline. These initiatives are highlighted in your beautiful brochures that are on your table, and you'll hear more about some of this work later in the program. Although this is a celebration, it is also a time to reflect on the inequities that persist in our educational and legal systems. And it's also a time to continue our fierce advocates, because we have plenty of those in this room tonight. Tonight, we are honored to have a panel discussion focusing on the 70th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, specifically what has changed and what has not in achieving the goal of racial equity in schools. Thank you to all of the panelists for their work to prepare for this evening. I know it will be a great discussion. I'd also like to take some time to thank all of those who have made tonight possible. The great food out there, this beautiful setup in this room, that would not be possible without the work of Jackie and Michelle and Marlise. Thank you for all your work in putting the event together. No lie, they start working on next year's event tomorrow. A big thank you to the YAF Event Committee, the YAF Board, all of our wonderfully generous sponsors, all the volunteers working tonight in the blue shirts, specifically Sydney Hackmeyer for all the work she did throughout the semester soliciting items for the silent auction. Don't forget, you could still vote on your phone. And the recruiting volunteers and many other tasks. Our honorees, we are grateful for all that you do. Crystal Haynes, our wonderful MC, and will be moderating our panel a little later. Edith Bazil, one of our YAF board members, for the work she has done at Black Advocates for Educational Excellence and for her help in putting together the panel and her incredible advocacy on behalf of students at the McKinley. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the pro bono attorneys helping us expand the reach of our advocacy as well as the EdLaw and YAF team. All of the CAFL and YAD attorneys and staff, as well as all of the public defenders who work alongside us in advocating for youth and emerging adults in the Commonwealth with incredible zeal. Josh Sillinger and Ben Butchwald for their help with the AV needs of our program tonight. All of the staff at the Charles Hotel for their hard work on our behalf. Our wonderful student speakers who have generously shared their stories with us tonight. Anthony Benedetti, Chief Counsel of CPCS, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but whose support has been instrumental to YAF and has been unwavering. Last but not least, a big thank you to all of you here tonight, both in person and virtually, for your continued support. Thank you so much. All right, now we're going to get to the awards, and tonight I have the honor of presenting the Community Justice Award to Citizens for Juvenile Justice, who we affectionately refer to as CFJJ. They're over here. Citizens for Juvenile Justice is known as a statewide nonprofit organization dedicated to advocating for systemic reform and equity for young people within Massachusetts. They have been an instrumental, critical partner of ours in this work. At the heart of CFJJ's mission lies a commitment to empowering youth, families, and communities by promoting policies and practice that prioritize prevention, intervention, and diversion over punitive measures. Through collaborative efforts with lawmakers, stakeholders, and the community at large, CFJJ has spearheaded numerous legislative and systemic reforms aimed at reducing youth incarceration rates, eliminating racial and ethnic disparities, and safeguarding the rights of young people involved in the legal system. They have partnered with us, as well as a number of you in this room that are part of the Juvenile Justice Coalition, on the Raise the Age campaign. And for those of you who are curious, we got an extension until the end of June, so we are continuing our advocacy efforts with the great work in partnership with CFJJ and so many others here tonight. CFJJ's impact extends far beyond legislative advocacy. Through their comprehensive research, education, and outreach initiatives, CFJJ sheds light on critical issues affecting youth in the legal system, amplifying their voices and advocating for systemic change. By fostering dialogue, raising awareness, and fostering collaboration among diverse stakeholders, CFJJ strives to create a more just and compassionate juvenile legal system that nurtures the potential of every young person in Massachusetts. CFJJ regularly publishes reports on important juvenile justice issues affecting Massachusetts. And I have used plenty of those reports in my direct representation, along with a lot of the attorneys here tonight. But we've also used it in our advocacy, our legislative advocacy and systemic advocacy. The reports featuring relevant state data and national research on best practices and stories from impacted young people and their families provide critical information to the public and policy decision makers about the best ways to improve our state systems for children and young people. CFJJ also publishes one report that I think is critical to what we're talking about tonight. It's a report called Schools Out, and it talks about, woo, let's give it up. And it talks about education in the adult corrections system and how it's woefully inadequate. If you guys want to check out their reports, you can go online. All of their publications are there. Little shameless plug. Driven by passionate commitment to social justice and youth empowerment, CFJJ exemplifies this transformative power of grassroots activism and collaborative advocacy. With their unwavering dedication and tireless advocacy, CFJJ continues to inspire positive change and pave the way for a brighter, more equitable future for Massachusetts youth. Today, we honor CFJJ and celebrate their invaluable contributions to our advocacy efforts. And on behalf of CFJJ, I'm calling up Leon Smith, Executive Director for CFJJ, to accept the award.
Good evening. So on behalf of our entire staff and our board of directors, we are so filled with gratitude to receive this honor. You know, anytime your work is recognized, it means a lot. But to receive this recognition tonight from an organization like YAF that we have had the honor and privilege to work in solidarity with and collaboration with for so many years, and to receive it in a room like this, filled with so many familiar faces and amazing attorneys and advocates, that makes this really and truly special. So I'll keep it very quick. We love you, we appreciate you, and we thank you.
And now I'm pleased to introduce YAF's President and CEO and Director of the EdLaw Project, the organization that YAF funded and grew over the last 23 years before it became an official part of CPCS last June, Marilise Spaniard, who will highlight the work that YAF has done in the past year, recognize the YAF and EdLaw staff, and introduce the winner of the Commitment to Justice Award.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This night is one of my favorite nights, as I'm surrounded by friends, family, and supporters, all here for the same reason: to end the school-to-prison pipeline. This year has brought some amazing changes to YAF. Now that CPCS has assumed the funding of our EdLaw attorneys, we have ventured into new ways to support ending the pipeline. For starters, we hired 2 social workers to specifically support our EdLaw clients most at risk of entering the pipeline. This has made an incredible difference in the amount of support we can offer to families. I'd like to invite them to stand up and be recognized. Yeah, that's right, Richie. Rachel, Richie, along with me. And now I'd like the rest of the EdLaw Project staff also to stand up, please. Excellent, excellent. I see you trying not to stand. Yeah, we see you over there. I'd like to give a special shout out to YAF staff, Jackie and Michelle. They put this event on with such grace and efficiency. It's a beauty to behold. It's also hilarious because their dynamic is fun. I'm just so grateful. In addition to adding the social workers, we continue to run a pro bono panel with over 140 trained attorneys to provide education advocacies for families in need. We have supported the EdLaw attorneys as they filed a lawsuit in partnership with our friends at MHLAC, fighting for the education rights of young adults held in our state's houses of corrections. We have launched a client support initiative to help our EdLaw client families when they need additional support around food, transportation, or basic needs. And we have launched Voices, a space for young people and caregivers impacted by the school-to-prison pipeline to come together and make a plan of action to let their voices be heard. Please join me in watching a short video about voices.
Hi everyone, my name is Noor Taref. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Pennsylvania School of Social Policy and Practice, and I am a co-facilitator of the Voices Project at the Youth Advocacy Foundation.
Good evening, my name is Couture Brewster. I am the director of IVA Future. IVA Future is a statewide community of youth and allies working for full youth employment and the end to youth criminalization. I'm also honored to be working alongside Noor and YAF as a co-facilitator for the Voices Project.
We are sorry for not being able to be there with you in person this evening, and we are so delighted to share some information with you about the Voices Project that we have been working on for the past 2 years.
Voices stands for Voices of Impacted Communities, Ending the School to Prison Pipeline. It is a safe space for former clients of the Ed Law Project, both parents and students, to come together in a supportive environment with other folks who have gone through similar experiences with the school to pipeline in Massachusetts.
Since January of this year, the group has met monthly and is going strong with a combination of 15 students and parents. We work together to identify systemic and interpersonal challenges contributing to the school to prison pipeline in our local contexts.
Members of Voices are also trained to be community ambassadors who can support their communities. And together, we're working to create change, find ways to disrupt the school to prison pipeline, and create the conditions that promote flourishing for our communities.
We are sorry again for not being there with you tonight in person, and we hope that you enjoy the evening, and we appreciate your continued support for Voices and for our mission. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's some more information about Voices in the program, including the definition that the group drafted together of the school to prison pipeline, which is pretty impressive. Okay. Now I'm honored to introduce the winner of the Commitment to Justice Award, Lael Chester. Lael is a well-known friend to many in this room.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay. Lael has dedicated her entire career to advocacy in juvenile, criminal, and civil rights law and policy, and is a nationally known expert on juvenile and emerging adult justice. Her accomplishments are too numerous to list, but suffice it to say, Lael has had a part of every positive juvenile reform in Massachusetts over the past 2 decades, from raising the age of what it means to be a juvenile to include 17-year-olds, to fighting the overuse of secure confinement, to addressing racial disparities in the courtroom, to the creation of a statewide juvenile defense model, to the pending Raise the Age legislation. Lael has been there at the forefront. Her friendly, easy manner and collaborative spirit bring people to the table, often unlikely pairings, and they get the work done. And lastly, I would be remiss if I did not mention data. Hardly a sexy topic, but Lael realized early and often the importance of collecting, extracting, analyzing, and sharing data. Her arguments are always grounded in data and extremely effective because of it. I could not be more pleased to celebrate Lael with the Commitment to Justice Award.
Thank you so much. I want to give a special thanks to the Youth Advocacy Foundation entire team that does extraordinary work. Receiving recognition from them means the world to me. So thank you very, very much.
I just have to mention that all, instead of, those hunks of glass that sort of sit on your desk and things like that, all of our awardees are getting some beautiful paintings from Artists for Humanities. And so the artwork is just stunning, and I know is a treasured keepsake for everyone who receives one tonight. So thank you so much to Artists for Humanities for providing those. It is now my distinct pleasure to call to the stage EdLaw Senior Counsel and the Executive Director of YAF, Michelle Scavangelli. Now, Michelle has been dealing with all of my antics as we plan this, and anyone who can wrangle my schedule deserves a round of applause. So please.
Okay. Sorry, I was just giving some stage direction, probably unneeded and certainly unwanted. But anyway, since part of my job is keeping the event on time, I could say a lot for a long time about our next honoree. I came to YAF as an Equal Justice Fellow, and part of doing that is you're supposed to kind of find ways to work with law firms. And so we started a pro bono panel back in like 2015. And Goodwin Proctor was an early adopter. And initially there was a gentleman there, Michael Paponi, who retired about a year or two after doing it. And we were kind of wondering what would happen at Goodwin. But Greg Katz, who we're going to honor tonight, stepped right in. And in the book, and he has either personally represented or been the supervising partner on, the book says 15, but they just took another case, Goodwin did, although I think you're not supervising that one, Greg, but since the start, there's no one else that's even come close to that. One early story I remember about Greg is his very first client was a young man in Brockton who was struggling in school. And Greg got in there, did a lot of things, and the case, nicely resolved. When you're a lawyer, it's not like you're a doctor where you have clients for your life. It's case by case. But then I found out like a year later, Greg was still in touch with this young man, still going to his team meetings, giving him advice. I think that says a ton for the kind of person he is. He's also one of our few pro bono attorneys. I think he won successfully a motion for summary judgment at the BSCA. You probably hadn't even heard of the BSCA before. So he has the legal skills and the people skills. And Greg, before we have you come up here, there's a few people who want to say something to you. Take a look at the screen.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg, for helping me come home.
We really appreciate you, Greg.
Thank you guys for everything.
Thank you, Greg, for all the things you've helped with in the last year. Thank you, Greg, for the things that you've helped me with this year. Thanks, Greg.
What's going on, Greg? Scones, David, sorry. I want to congratulate you on the award you are receiving. Definitely earned it. I want to, say thank you from the bottom of my heart. You did help me out a lot with the schools and just figuring it out for my education. So I do appreciate you. Now, I say I'm doing pretty good for myself. I got a beautiful family. I'm in the United States Army. I'm doing pretty good. So again, congratulations. You definitely deserve it. And I hope you nothing but more success and fortune in your future.
Join me in, it's my pleasure to invite up Greg Katz. That was Greg's very first client. And his mom and sister wanted to be here tonight, but they had a babysitting problem. But they congratulate you too. Greg Katz, everyone.
Thank you so much. That was amazing to see all of my clients, and David was my very first client, and to see him doing well in the Army is just really touching, and I'm so thankful. I'm thankful for Marlise and Michelle and Tim and Aaron and all of the great people at the EdLaw Project and YAF, and in particular my colleagues at Goodwin, with whom I couldn't do any of the work that I do without all of the work that you do supporting all of these clients. Thank you very much. Really appreciate this honor. It's a wonderful evening, and thanks for inviting me to participate. Thank you.
All right. And now for the main event, I'm going to ask our panelists to come on up to the stage as I read you some short bios. As you know, this year we are highlighting the 70th anniversary of the landmark Supreme Court decision Brown versus the Board of Education. And I'm reminded of a very brief encounter that I actually had with Ruby Bridges, and how she will always tell you that the work didn't begin, it didn't end with her either. And so it's a continuing issue that needs to all of the effort and all of the passion that we feel in the room, certainly by the clients that we just heard from Greg's work, and all the other, the work that Leon and the folks at, what is it, CFJJ, as we lovingly call it. So certainly this is work that's going to continue, and discussions like this are so important, especially the one we're about to have. So let's talk about the folks who are on this amazing panel. Although it's been 70 years since the abolishment of purposeful school segregation, our public schools remain deeply segregated, right? And there is so much work to be done to create equitable education for all children. Tonight, we are excited to present a panel of experts who will discuss a look back at the history following Brown and where we are today. I'm thrilled to call to the stage our panelists, former Boston Public Schools Chief Equity and Strategy Officer and founder and CEO of Global Ecosystem Leadership, Dr. Charles Granson. We also have, yes. I guess have a seat from the end. Yeah, there we go. Also with us is Medford School Committee member and the Mayors for Youth Employment Program Director for the City of Malden, Erin Opalade. And of course, you know her, you love her, founder and executive director of Black Advocates for Educational Excellence, Edith Bazil. And now I'm going to switch over to the other mic as we moderate our discussion here. Okay. Oh, there we go. Everybody okay? I feel like I'm hitting my mic. Am I hitting my mic? Sorry about that. So, Dr. Granson, I think we want to just sort of level set the history of Brown and talk to us a little bit about the key decisions and the actions that followed the Brown decision.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal, and I'd like to thank Michelle and everyone involved with YAF, and also Edith and Aaron. And just really happy to be here tonight and to be a part of this panel. It's inspiring to just hear all the stories and to know that there are people out there who still care and who are still doing great work. 70 years. In 7 days, it'll actually make exactly 70 years, because it was 1954, May 17th, right, that the Brown decision was laid out. And I appreciate the question. I think I want to start, though, with also looking at where we started, right, and how we got to Brown. And then I'll just give a little overview of Brown and then talk about where we've been since then. I'm going to start with a quote. America is an old house. We can never declare the work over. When you live in an old house, you may not want to go into the basement after a storm to see what the rains have wrought. Choose not to look, however, at your own peril. The owner of an old house knows that whatever you are ignoring will never go away. Whatever is lurking will fester, whether you choose to look or not. Ignorance is no protection from the consequences of inaction. That's a quote by Isabel Wilkerson from her book Caste, if any of you all are familiar with that. Yeah, give it up for Isabel Wilkerson. And I thought it was really a good way to set the stage for the conversation, which has been a recurring conversation in our country. When you look at how we got to Brown, our house, the state of Massachusetts, is very much a part of that story. And so many of you all, I'm sure, are familiar with the Sarah Roberts case. And Roberts versus the city of Boston, Benjamin Roberts, Sarah Roberts' father, filed a lawsuit against the city of Boston because Sarah Roberts had to walk past 5 schools before she could before she could actually get to her school, which was a school that was for black students. And that was in 1849. And so it was actually the Massachusetts Supreme Court who denied Sarah Roberts access and denied black children access to an equal and fair public education. And the Massachusetts Supreme Court, with that precedent, would set the stage for the almost next 100 years in our country. Then we get to Brown versus Board of Education. And what's very interesting in going back and looking at some of this, you experience these things and you even teach them. I was a history teacher, and you go back and look at it and sort of relive it. And when we get through, we talked about that 100 years leading up to Brown. Kansas, there were 11 cases that were sort of the test cases that led up to what would be the 1954 Supreme Court decision. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the great Charles Hamilton Houston, who I believe there's a center at the law school there, and the late great Charles Ogletree found it when he was at the law school, Harvard Law School. And Charles Hamilton Houston was a great Charles who was born in Washington, D.C., and he made his way to schools in Massachusetts, like I did. And so he actually went to Amherst College, later Harvard Law School, and it was his brilliance that led to, he was sort of the architect of Brown. And Thurgood Marshall was his student who actually saw through the case, argued it before the Supreme Court, and unfortunately, Charles Hamilton Houston died 4 years before the decision. But it was his strategy as a part of the NAACP legal defense team to first try the cases as it related to graduate students in graduate schools around the country, and then get to what would be more hotly contested, which would be K-12 education. Brown, as I wrap up, itself, as we know, overturned the past 100 years and reaffirmed the 14th Amendment and stated that the segregation violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and that separate but equal could no longer be the law of the land, that it was not fair in providing quality education to African American students, and actually that it was detrimental to their well-being, mental health. This was significant and a very significant change for race relations in our country, but it also called for Brown 2. And so another Isabel Wilkerson quote I sort of have here is, caste is insidious and therefore powerful because it's not hatred. It is not necessarily personal. It is worn gloves of comforting routines and unthinking expectations, patterns of social order, that have been in place for so long that it looks like the natural order of things. And that just speaks to, that just because there's a case, as many of you all in this room know, preaching to the choir, on a decision doesn't mean that there's going to be action. And so we needed Brown 2 to say this is how it needs to be implemented. Boston is right at the center of that story as well, as many of you all know, and many of the cases that came after Brown 2, for example, Charlotte-Mecklenburg case there, argued for the use of busing to integrate schools, right? That was affirmed during that case in the 70s. Lastly, I'll say about Brown 2, it spoke to this idea of all deliberate speed, and that was a term that I remember very well, as Charles Ogletree wrote a book, I think it was back in 2007, with that title, and this idea that we were giving local entities time to actually implement Brown, and to be intentional about it, that it was a local responsibility and that there should be judicial oversight. Again, something we have experience with in Boston. Yeah. So I'll wrap up there. Yep, I know it was long, but I had to get that, lay out the history. And I, again, appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, and certainly we'll touch upon some of those historical moments throughout the conversation. But Edith, I want to talk a little bit about the historical impact of the Brown decision on education of students of color. We saw some of that with your work with students in the videos and Elijah and things, but certainly talk to us about the impact, right, since Brown and Brown 2.
So, thank you for that question. And I just want to say you all look lovely this evening. It's so good to be here around a collective community. I just feel like I'm sitting here getting a warm embrace. And I just want to thank YAF for all of the work that they've done, and it's such a pleasure to work with everyone. I guess what I want to say, Crystal, is my parents came here from Mississippi, and after my father served in World War II, he went back to a lot of lynchings, and it was tough in the South. And so he came here and moved on to Beacon Hill. He lived in Beacon Hill in the late 1940s. There's been a lot of great stuff happening on Beacon Hill. Black folks, since slavery was abolished, worked hard to open up the first school. I think it was Prince Hall opened the school in 1733. So there's been a fight for equity in education. We have the African Meeting House, where they launched the first integrated school in 1855. So we really have a long history in Massachusetts of being firsts. First public school, first black school, first integrated school. I like to sit on that in terms of thinking about the struggles and also the achievements that have been made in this great state. Do we have a lot of work to do? Absolutely. In thinking about, it was only about 150 years ago that we had laws that banned black students from reading. Literacy was against the law. And I think what Brown did is it said, it codified the right of black students in particular to be able to go to schools that not only exposed them to literacy, but it was a fight for equity. Equity was the issue. How do we have equitable schools, despite the fact that there were freedom schools, there were schools that were designed for black students, and integrated schools right here in Massachusetts, they were not equal. They didn't get equal funding, they didn't have equal staffing, they didn't have materials that were respectable. And so I think as we look at the history and the struggle, equity is still the elusive dream that we are trying to pursue collectively. And it really is about equitable funding, seeing the full humanity of students, and saying that I, sitting here as a black child, I went to schools during segregation, and my younger siblings, because I came from a family of 14, so we have a lot of history there. Two-parent family, we owned a house. My parents moved to Roxbury and bought a 3-family house and then filled it up with all of us. Eating on the first floor, girls on the second floor, boys and parents on the third floor. So it was a very lively upbringing. But as I think about that and I look at desegregation, you know, it wasn't about integration. It was really about having books that were new, having curriculum that was rigorous, being able to have access to a pathway to college and career. And I think we are still struggling in that way. Many people who fought for the abolishment of slavery for access and opportunities, I mean, we have to have a conversation about what does equity look like. It's not okay just to eliminate segregation. We must pursue equity. So I think we've made progress. There's so much more to be made. We know what to do. It really has to do with having the policies, the practices, the procedures, and the access in order to make that happen.
That's right. So, it's right. Go ahead and clap. All right. So we talked about how we've gotten here. Let's talk about where we're going now. And Aaron, this is a question for you. As a student in Medford and someone who is now on the school committee, what do you see as the evidence of differential treatment of students? And we're talking in terms of race, income, and disability.
That's a great question, and I want to say thank you to everyone. Much like my panelists, I'm so, I think, blessed and privileged to be up here with the rest of them and to be able to be in this space with you all, so thank you. I think when we talk about educational equity as an idea, as a concept, we haven't even agreed on what that is yet. How do we achieve it at large? So when we think about where we've come from 70 years ago, we determined that segregation, the separation by race, is unconstitutional. But we didn't determine what systems we were going to then put in place to create an equitable experience in the classroom. So even in the same classrooms today, the same cities, the same districts, our students don't have the same access to the education that they're supposed to be learning, that they're supposed to be retaining. And I think that when I look at my own district that I went through as a public school student and now that I'm advocating for on the school board, I think that we see the disproportionate suspension rate, the disproportionate amount of treatment of students based off of economic ability, of racial ability, of ableism. Our students are treated differently and that their access to the education in the same classroom is inaccessible. We see students and we understand that out-of-school suspensions don't work. And in some ways, in-school suspensions don't work. And that's because the way we're offering the education, the way that we want our students to retain that content, doesn't come the same for each and every student. And when we think about internal and external factors, cultural, racial, economic, for example, those things directly affect your ability to understand the content. And if we as educators, we as advocates aren't actually acknowledging that, connecting our own experience to the experience of the students, what chance do they have? How do we make it accessible to them? And I think that when I got through high school and went to college, that was my big question. That was how I wanted to continue my work, is understanding how I can be a true advocate. It's easy to say, I want to work with these students, I want to serve these students, but how are we truly serving them day to day? That intentionality is what I think guides me day to day, and I think it should be what guides each of us to serve our students.
Well said, well said. I want to move to what we can do now. Where do we go from here? Because I think that talking about solutions is the point of all of the work that we do here in this building. I know I've reported on different initiatives by the state to increase teacher diversity, to reimagine what a student who is differently abled in the classroom looks like, and how do we identify those students and get the services that they need. But Dr. Grants, I'd love to talk to you about where do you see as some of the solutions that you have seen are working, and what we need to do better to build upon those, because I know that you serve different levels of education, from teaching to superintendent's office to ops and things like that.
Yeah. Thanks for that question. I think it really comes down to, leadership matters. And it's not just leadership at the highest levels, but leadership in our classrooms, leadership in our community. We go back to some of the examples Edith provided when we talked about Sarah Roberts. It was African American parents, families, educators who stood up, who pushed to get those cases brought forward. And we have to get back to that in a very grassroots way in our communities. And so I'm very proud of some of the work that I did and folks like Edith in the Boston Public Schools, where during the height of the pandemic, we opened our practice, right? We created this thing called a Community Equity Roundtable. And it's about bringing voices to the table with this idea that the expertise lies with those who are most impacted by the work. And that is the students, that's the teachers, those are the individuals who are serving in our schools, or those individuals who are serving in our juvenile justice system, and other partners. And so I think those kind of strategies are important for bringing people together to figure out innovative solutions, different approaches. That approach in BPS during the pandemic allowed us to identify every individual student and made sure that teachers were looking at data and then getting in their cars and driving those devices directly to students in their homes. And it took an international pandemic and something that really shook the foundation of our education system in order to do that. But it allowed us to see what's possible, right, if we think outside of the box.
Yeah. Edith, same question. What do you see has worked, is working, and needs to be better?
Well, first of all, I want to say to paraphrase the great Malcolm X, we've all been bamboozled, hoodwinked, and lied to. And we've been given a system that has the remnants of colonial thinking coming out of slavery. And unless we have an intentional conversation, because let me just say this, and I want to be very clear with this. When I went to school, yes, we were very poor. We didn't take any handouts. My father said, if you don't have any lunch, you don't take a handout. And I'll tell you, to this day, I can smell those warm ginger cookies and those bologna sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly that I couldn't eat. However, my teachers felt that because I was poor, that I wasn't capable. They weren't mean. They weren't racist. They thought that this poor girl from Roxbury who had 13 siblings and you never saw my parents because they were too busy, was not capable of learning. And so when I wrote something that was really high level, they thought that I plagiarized. So I got in trouble and I learned to dumb my work down. What we have to dismantle is not just systems, but thinking about what poverty means, what it means to be Black, what it means to come from that neighborhood, what it means if your parents can't come to school because they are working 3 jobs and they don't have the time. We need to understand what it means when a child who came from trauma, because poverty creates trauma. It doesn't affect your brain, it still works. My brain worked fine. I could read, I wanted to learn, but because I was hungry and poor and I didn't talk, because my parents said, when you go to school, keep your mouth shut, don't talk about our business, and I don't want any calls. If I get a call, you're gonna be in trouble. So I think it means understanding what difference truly means. And when my teacher said that I was not college material, in fact, they told my parents that I had borderline intelligence. For me, I thought my teachers were stupid. I'm like, no, you're the one. You are the one. But that's unusual. We often talk about children being resilient. Children should not have to be resilient against systems that don't work for them. And so I knew because I saw what the violence and what poverty creates. Poverty creates desperation. It creates people who don't have things that others take for granted. And you know what? We're all gonna eat. If I don't have food and you have food, guess what? I'm gonna wait until you're not looking, or maybe I'm gonna just take your food in front of you because I'm hungry. And so we have to really think about the systems that we create and dismantle our thinking about why. Why is it that we place Black students in the back of the classroom? Why do we deny them access to AP courses, honor courses, exam schools? Why are they in special education? why don't they respond to our questions, which, you know, could be insulting? And so it really has to do with thinking about the system that we were all inducted to, whether you have privilege or you were like me on the other end, that I'm black and I'm poor and I come from a neighborhood where you think nothing good comes out of. And that is the problem. So we need to have an intentional conversation about that. We need to unpack, unlearn, dismantle our thinking in order to have the tools, strategies, and the perspective to dismantle systems that were perpetuated because of this haves and have-not situation. If I take my candle and I light your candle, you don't have less light, you have more.
That's right.
And there's a perception that when you allow poor black children to go in certain schools and neighborhoods in numbers, then that's going to drive the achievement down. We now see attack on DEI, we see an attack on affirmative action. Well, you know, from our perspective, white folks have had affirmative action for a long time. And we have not had a piece of that pie, even though we built this country. You know, when slavery ended, white folks were given reparations for losing their property. And so we have to really think about that. Is it your fault that you have privilege? Absolutely not. And I'm talking to you white folks, okay? I hope you don't mind. Let's just have a conversation. But what I mean by that is we are all in this together. And I want to end by saying that Martin Luther King has a quote, and I'm just going to paraphrase it again. And it goes something like, I can't be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you cannot be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. That's the interrelatedness of society. We don't know whose child is going to marry and fall in love and marry someone else's child. And so if I am that child that came from the have-nots and you are the family of the haves, we may be connected, and that's the real interconnectedness. We are that close in society, and we saw that from the pandemic. So I think we have to fix this. We have to fix our thinking, fix our minds, and we have to get together and collectively say, as Malcolm X said, we have been bamboozled, duped, lied to, and then we have to resist that and say enough is enough. We have to have a system that works for everyone because we don't have another world to escape to. This is it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well said. Aaron, I think out of all of us on the panel, if I can take the liberty of saying, is closest to the actual school system in terms of being a student. Talk to me about what you see as the substantive change that needs to happen so that we do get to the equity, to the equality, to even the parity that we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah, I think that, you know, de Tocqueville said something in his Democracy in America piece about how we are the epicenter of modern democracy. And I think eventual equality, that he believed that our early democracy was the great experiment, as he called it. And I love that because I think it considers how we are just one or two changes away, one or two generations away from a completely different set of systems than what we currently have. We are always in a constant state of flux as this United Nations, as the United States, and in some ways it speaks to our fragility. We are so incredibly fragile, and we always are ready to make a change that is both positive or negative. And it's up to us as, I think, the adults, the ones with more experience, to usher in the changes, those changes being the generations to come after us. We have an opportunity to consider the humility, the faith, and the hope that we all should be carrying with us as we walk our students through the gates of adulthood. When I think about trying my best to, I think, advocate and support the young people I work with, there's a sense of humility you need to hold every conversation because I don't have all the answers. I don't know how best to support you and serve you. And I think that my colleagues and my peers at my age don't either. Right? We need to constantly be open to learning new things and understanding better how we can support the generation that are currently living in today's world. That then makes me think about the faith that I have, the faith that the system that we currently have is flawed. But I also see moments, I see individuals like this room of people who do care, who do want to see change for our young people. And then it gives me hope. It gives me a hope, a sense of belief that we can create a system for the younger generation so that they can then lead their generation after them. So it leads with hope, faith, and humility. Those three, I think, tenets are what give me purpose. And I think it should give each of you purpose, because those three things are things that you can do every day. Those are intentional changes in the way that you approach conversations with the young people, especially in moments where these young people feel as though they don't have a way forward. They don't feel as though that their value is evident, but their value is intrinsic. And we need to lead them. We need to make them understand that they do have value. Their individualism, their sense of self is valuable. And we need to levy that in a way that hasn't been done before, so that as we continue to move through this great experiment, the generations to come are the ones who are truly leading us properly.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I want to go ahead. In a true Socratic method, I would love to open it up for a brief Q&A here to our panel. If anyone has any questions. Yes, Judge.
So how about the reality that 70 years after Brown, our schools are more segregated than they were at the time of Brown because of lack of adequate funding of certain school districts? So that's part of the cradle to prison pipeline, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So the question for folks who didn't hear was talking about how school systems or school districts are more segregated even now than right after Brown in some ways. And so bringing that question to the panel about what they think about that, and I think solutions to change that. Yeah, Edith?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Thank you, Judge Jay, for asking that. I think it is the reification of segregation. When you have a machine bureaucracy, which school systems are, there's a looping effect. You change something, and that bureaucracy has a way of coming back to recreating that inequity. Because this, and that's why we need reform. When we talk about dismantling systems of equity, it means to create a new structure, but you have to dismantle the thinking behind the structure that you have. And so, yes, we have resegregation, but guess what we also have? We have a huge transportation bill. So in my district, Boston Public Schools, we have Charlestown High School that is chronically underperforming. Only 4% of the students live in the neighborhood. And this is a school that has a low graduation rate, disproportionate representation of segregation and special education, the whole 9 yards. Students go through the tunnel, they spend more than an hour being transported to a school that is chronically underperforming. So you say, how does this happen? We have to look at the root cause of it, which is the assignment algorithms. I live in this neighborhood, I can't go to this, that, or the other school, but I have to go all the way across to a different neighborhood that has a school that has primarily black students in it. The system has a way of looping itself back into that mindset. And so we still have the status quo. We have students who live in certain parts of Boston, like Mattapan, who have a 1% chance of attending a high-performing school. If you live in the North End, the Back Bay, in West Roxbury, your chances of attending a high-achieving school is 85 to 90%. And so this has to do with how systems talk to each other and who created those systems. And that's what we have to look at. We always talk about, what we can do to make a school better, but we don't get to the root cause. The root cause is that we dump a whole bunch of kids who are black and brown in the same underperforming school with understaffing, teachers who are not very experienced, and with a crumbling infrastructure. And then we have other schools that have cutting-edge, state-of-the-art facilities, like the McKinley schools, no gym, no cafeteria, no science lab. I mean, how do you expect students to perform? There's no equity there. So
yeah, I think we're going to take, you're right. I just want to take one more question just so that we have it. Yes, ma'am.
So when the three of you are out and about and meet people, like, let's say, an urban teacher in the come to you and I say, what is your best advice? What would you tell me? You know, what is one thing I can do? Because I have a tremendous responsibility to use my privilege to advocate for my students in effective, meaningful ways. So if, like, what would you say how to do that? Or what would you give to the people here who are not school teachers, who have other facets of their lives? Like, what is your one thing you would say if you meet a school teacher?
So the question is for folks who may not heard is if you meet, if one of the panelists meets a school teacher, what piece of advice would the panel give that teacher in order to create an environment of equity, inclusion, and belonging? And I'll start with you, Dr. Granson.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say, I think when you're in the teacher's lounge or in the faculty meeting and you feel that pit at the bottom of your stomach because you know what people are saying is not the right thing, and you have to decide when and how to do this to survive, right? But you got to speak up, right? And you got to say something, and you got to say, no, actually, I don't think that's the case, or we know better, right? And we can do better. And that's not easy, right? I've been there as a teacher, being that person. And then the next time you come to the teacher's lounge, everybody turns their head, right, or put their head down, right? Great, I'll go eat in my classroom with the students. That's fine. But so I think that is going to be that's really important, and that's not just in classrooms in schools. That's in every industry and field all of us work in.
Mm-hmm. Aaron.
I think that, and I don't want to put more burden on the teachers in some way, but I will say that I think get to know your students. They have so much to offer, and I think that a lot of the time they don't feel quite comfortable yet letting themselves be themselves. I know that a lot of students that I've worked with or peers of mine when I was growing up didn't feel like they had a space to speak their minds or say where they were feeling like they didn't understand what was going on. It wasn't just because they didn't want people to know that they didn't get the content, but they didn't want to impose themselves on the authorities in the room or on the administration in the schools. And I think that allowing students to be their full selves will create a sense of camaraderie in the classroom that you really haven't seen before. Students are so much more willing to offer up their interests, their ideas, their willingness to be a student. And knowledge should not be a question. It should be something that is apparent. It should be something that should be evident. We should be offering that up to each student, and students want that. We have to connect our experiences with theirs as soon as possible so that they feel like they can take in what we want to offer them. And that starts with getting to know them. That starts with trying to understand them. And that's not going to happen immediately. That's not going to happen on the first day of school during syllabus week. That might take the whole year or multiple years. But showing up matters. Showing up means something, and students will eventually understand that, and they'll see that, and they might not even tell you. Being a teacher is thankless. We know that. It is an incredibly thankless job more often than not, but students remember, students recognize, and they will remember that type of intentionality of commitment to them for years and years to come, and you might not know it, but understand that it's happening.
Edith, I'll give you the final word here.
All right, so I'll try to be quick. First of all, thank you for the question, and I would say thank you for your service. Because it matters that you're there. It matters that teachers have you as students have you as a life raft. And I would say give yourself oxygen and make sure that you're engaging in self-care because it's tough being an educator. I would also say that you matter in terms of that kind word, that kind gesture. That makes a difference. I did not have a teacher that believed in me. And so I say that I survived my education, I didn't thrive. I had not one teacher that said, you're smart, or any positive, that makes a big difference. Teacher expectations drives students' performance. And if you don't believe in me, I can't perform in your class. And what I mean by believing in me, don't think that I am my trauma. Something happened to me. I'm in this situation of poverty through no fault of my own. I walk to school with the same clothes or with holes in my shoes. I'm in pain, I'm sad, I'm depressed. But you know what? I still want to learn. Give me rigor. give me a challenge. Let me know that my future is going to be better. When I was in school, my local librarian, I would say, you know that song, how that song goes, last night a DJ saved my life? Well, a librarian saved my life because my local librarian gave me books. I read Black Boy, and that resonated with me. You know why? Because I was hungry all the time. I didn't have no food, and I couldn't take that, you know, peanut butter and jelly sandwich from that teacher as much as I wanted. It was torture, but I couldn't take it. And they thought there was something wrong with me. But what I'm saying is a kind gesture to a child. You don't have to know their business, their story. They may not tell you, I was threatened not to say anything. And, you know, students may come from that perspective, but know that there is no such thing as a child who does not want to learn. There's no such thing. You know, you go to war-torn countries, children are still, you know, writing words in the dirt. You know, they're playing games and they're playing with vocabulary. Children want to learn. So believing in children and modeling that. But you also need professional development. That's what I went into in my profession, because teachers need the tools, the strategies, and the resources to do the work. And most often, if you are working in schools that are, you know, are filled with students who are challenging because they all take us and they put us in the same school together, and that's a setup for failure, you're not going to have those cutting-edge resources. And you know, assume that the parents want their children to do better than what they are, what they have done, whether they're in jail or, you know, they're struggling with their own personal issues, you know, or homeless. Parents want their children to be better than them, even if they don't articulate. Shame comes with poverty.
Yes.
There's shame involved. And so understanding but not pitying, because charity is not equity. And, you know, we don't want a handout, we want a hand up.
Right. Very well said. Well, I'm sure we could talk about this all night long, but we have a few other things to do. And I know Edith will, in the panel, be around for the ice cream sundaes afterwards. So, 2 reasons to stay. So I want to thank our panel. Thank you so much as we move on to the next program. So, and now, in what I know is certainly a highlight of these annual events, it's time to hear from our first student who can tell us, so in their own words, about how access to education advocacy has really made a difference in their ability to succeed in school.
It's my pleasure to develop my client, but more importantly, my friend, Eli Jerome.
Good afternoon, you all. My name is Elijah Jerome, and today I'm here to be sharing my story. When I was 6 years old, my first ever placement was involving DCF. I would like to give a good uplifting shout out to my attorney, Pavel Peramov, who has been working with me for some time, almost about 10 years now. Living in Boston, in my past, I've attended McKinley Elementary School and middle school all the way up until the 8th grade. What I said about this place was right, because I really never learned anything there. In the 9th grade, I attended Campus Academy in Stoneham. My experience was really good until my senior year. Due to a situation in campus, they wanted me suspended. My attorney, Pavel, and my CASA, Elizabeth, they reached out to Michelle from Ed Law, and she did her thing. Michelle worked her magic and figured out I was only missing a semester of math in order for me to earn my diploma. She arranged for me to have a one-on-one individual instruction for a business math class. I finished this January with a grade of an A. Michelle brought me my transcripts so I could see the grade, and then 2 weeks later, she handed my diploma in my hand. The last few weeks, me, my attorney Pavel, Michelle, and the Youth Advocacy Foundation's best social worker, Richie Torres. We all have been working to make a plan for my future. This summer, I'll be living with my aunt out in a different state, hoping to come back in the fall so I can attend and enroll in Salem State University. YAF's client support helped me make this possible. I was never really nervous about my future, but I'm surely grateful to have these people on my team because they're some soldiers and they're willing to be in my life.
Oh, what an inspiring testimony. That's amazing. And now, for a little high culture here, that won't hurt, we promise. Our next presenter is appearing for the 4th year in a row, and has truly become part of the YAF family. So much so that she is a member of our board. So reading a poem that she wrote for this event specifically, reflecting on Brown in only the way that she can. It is my thrill to present the 2020 Boston Youth Poet Laureate, Alondra Bobadilla.
Good evening. All right, the title of this poem is Timelines. 1954. As if God's children could be separated by a sift, as if they were not all essence carriers. A gavel shatters the doctor in a separate but equal, and the sound still vibrates in the inner ears of the unjust. 1960. Louisiana sings a different song, and a hero becomes a little girl in uniform, ruby bridges, precious transitions, priceless consequences, hecklers grind their teeth to the last bone. 1965, Massachusetts court said it's time to break the cord, and the district said no, and I've heard that no before. Same frigid denial by which they speak today. The sound of pushback was loud. It rumbled the cobblestones, unearthing a foul smell from below the State House, and the march of mobs came out from behind shadows, their signs boasting, I am Jim Crow and I shall live forever. But on the other side of the hill, freedom schools were erected. Education was resistance, and resistance, a lifestyle. 1974, City on a Hill. Town Hall of National Struggle took 20 years too long to make legality a historic reality. I wonder about the holdup. Third most racist city in America, or whatever that one article said. That kind of hatred doesn't just make its bed. If unattended at its inception, it multiplies, infesting the subconscious of little boys and girls who try to justify injustice with the evolved vocabulary of diplomatic ignorance, or worse, pity. You got the governor of New York trying to describe inequity by saying black kids don't know the word computer. I don't know what's worse at this point, outright hatred or covert discrimination disguised as help and guilt. I don't want your help if underneath the surface you still think I'm stupid. 2020. Blaming the pandemic for every failure, to refusing record releases, to shutting down schools that are more like sets for horror stories, to silencing student voice under the pretense of delinquency, to trying to solve armed students with armed teachers, to walking in at 6 a.m. to metal detectors beeping, I can still hear the beeping. 2024. I learned about the McKinley, the place where dreams go to die. Daddy always told me that larks locked away would lose their minds. Well, the hallways of the Timothy still haunt mine, and Jenna's Globe in the article about its prime made something die within me. Did you know that the Timothy was once a vision of black and brown success in the middle of misery? In a high time of neighborhood crime, it was the beloved community. It went from excellence to a ghost town. How, who, why, mostly why. Could never seem to wrap my mind around the why. Why weren't they invested in? Why does the house turn against itself? Where do larks go when they finally fly away? 2024. We're still wondering why people work in high admin positions in the field of education without a lick of classroom or administrative experience, or worse, how a BLS even exists in the same school system as a McKinley in the first place, one with exclusive access to the horizon, while McKinley students are covering holes in the walls with art projects. How students' petitions for even the most intimate library or gym seem to fall on deaf ears. How a Mission Hill was open for so long. Conspiracies against our children sprawled across their desks, exposed and perpetually unprotected. Even amongst our own, you got people robbing from the mouths of children for even the slimmest of opportunities. Eat or be eaten logic. Blame the policy, not the byproducts. 2024. Great legal and policy feats were always met with lazy execution. They gave us Metco and left our district unbalanced, unmanaged, once again, shortest end of a stick, plucked off the wrong tree. I don't want branches from the seeds of supremacy. So, you take the so-called wild child, blackballed by the system. You honor their God-given worth. You teach them that the devil lives amongst us, and sometimes we call them our representatives. If we have to teach them all the etiquette of feigned professionalism to learn the game, so be it. Teach them the game, and then teach them how to dismantle it. In their vigor, they can shout from the rooftops what generations have been saying all along: this is rigged. And with their passion, we will teach them about the work of their martyrs. We will show them how far we have come so they don't lose heart on the way to the tomorrow. And let YAF amongst our beloved community be one of many mediums to love on those babies, to get them just a step closer. And let YAF be a neighbor and a friend in the long haul to justice for our kids. And let you, from wherever you gather in this room, with all our stories, we will make a quilt and cover over the sins of 1,000. And with our strive, we will break in a new era. Thank you.
Woo-wee! Give her another round of applause. We are going to, a little quick program note, we're going to go back to Jasa Australia's case. Only his attorney, Tim, is here to speak on his behalf.
Actually, Jasa's mother is going to speak on his behalf. Jasa had written an incredible speech. This has been a little overwhelming for him this evening, a number of contributing factors, but his mother is as eloquent as Jasa is. And I have to tell you, I've been practicing law a long time. I've had the opportunity to meet many, many types of people. Jasa is one of the finest people I have ever met, and his mother is only finer. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Tim, for your kind words. Jas is overwhelmed, I guess, with he didn't know what to expect, so I'll do this for him. So I was the mother who reached out, who called, and the reason why is this. Jas says, hi, everyone. My name is Jas Estrella. I was born in New Jersey from 2 Cape Verdean immigrant parents, and at the age of 5, I moved to New Bedford. Growing up in New Bedford, I was comfortable in the sense that I was surrounded by people who looked like me and shared similar backgrounds. But as I was growing up, my parents wanted a healthier environment for me and my little brother, so they decided to move us to Whitman, where they hoped we would be protected from urban dangers, more protected from urban dangers. Entering this new environment, I was filled with fear because early I perceived that I was no longer in my comfort zone. I've always been a passionate kid with a mindset that I can accomplish anything that I put my mind to, and the curiosity to find out how great I can be. My passion that had previously led me to some memorable accomplishments was now being received with judgment and reproach. And it did not take long for me to start feeling like that sheep, that black sheep among snow white sheep. Nothing much or grand was expected from the black sheep. That much was made obviously early on, and I realized that whatever good wasn't perceived, and I realized that whatever good wasn't perceived because the lens that were seeing me were full of preconceived, misleading notions and pure foul ignorance. My passion was labeled as aggression, and my pride and self-confidence were portrayed as threats and something to tame. At school, me and my small circle of friends, the few that looked like me, were constantly surveilled and punished harsher for simply being teenagers. All these judgments and punishments kept feeding into this growing resentment and frustration that was eating me inside, and I stopped seeing, and that was eating me inside, and I stopped seeing and working to the promises that once I believed in. These promises that I once carried. My dreams of being a school athlete were lost for a moment when I lost my position as the captain of my high school varsity team as a freshman, and I no longer had soccer nor basketball, which were my only refuge in this increasingly hostile environment. All my dreams and expectations were crumbling down, and at a certain point, I thought I would end up in the streets or in jail. The school officer seemed to agree with that, and he had no problem making it clear. Most of the adults that surrounded me outside my home gave me no hope. In fact, I feel like I was considered an enemy often. Sometimes I wonder where I would be if I was dealt better cards. Mistakes usually come with regrets, and my mistakes have taught me a few lessons. Fortunately, not every adult gave up on me, which is why I'm here today with renewed hope and confidence that I will be an adult that will add value to humanity. For that, I thank my family, your organization, and all that supports it, and make it possible for kids like me to be able to dream of a life of equity and equality.
So now we are getting to some of the fun stuff, like the raffle. So we're going to pick a raffle winner. Destiny's coming on up. All right. I know you're going to bring good luck to whomever. And listen, I just pulled the tickets. I don't. Okay. We have 80711. Oh. Allison it's cut off at the end. Allison Carbonara. Okay. It cut off at the end. Congratulations! All right. I think that's it. Good? Okay. All right. We're very seasoned professionals up here. Don't worry about it. Excellent. All right. So now we certainly want to move on to our Fund the Need section of the program. And, it's extremely important that we continue to have funds to continue the work that we are doing. You've heard so many amazing testimonies tonight from young people, from attorneys, from the difference that folks can make. We already are immensely grateful that you gave up your evening to come celebrate with us and bought stuff at the auction. And if you didn't, there's still time. We know that most of you have already given us financial support as well. But maybe something you heard tonight inspired you to dig a little bit deeper. Or maybe you're here as someone's guest and would like to contribute. So now is your chance. Go into your bidding app and hit the Donate Now button. We've got a thermometer. Wouldn't be a fundraiser without a thermometer on the screen here. And we are hoping to raise at least $10,000 right now in this moment here. And it's not just about me, but this is my first time hosting the event. And I'd like to be able to say that we raised more money than ever in the past. Otherwise, they won't ask me back, guys. So we need to get as close as possible to the $10,000 mark. Otherwise, they're going to say that Crystal Haynes, she just didn't bring the juice. You know what I'm saying? Let's talk a little bit about YAF as you get yourself organized and start donating. YAF has created a client assistance fund that, among other things, provides the emergency support for clients sometimes in need in order to be successful in educational opportunities that their attorneys have secured for them. We heard so many testimonies tonight, both in person and on video. Our fund addresses some of the most basic needs as well, including food, school supplies, clothing, electronics. We heard about the lack of access to even a tablet to do schoolwork. YAF can stand in the gap there. We also help provide transportation access, temporary housing assistance, independent evaluations to help students prevail in their cases against school districts. Oh, their names are coming up. Okay. This year, we have been able to help a lot of clients safely get to and from school and work, access to food, shelter, and all of the basics really somebody needs to be present in school. Are we at 10,000? Okay. You're going to get your name on the screen. If we can double that figure, the $10,000 that we raised tonight, it could help 50 to 100 clients in the coming year. If we double that figure, we can support even more of our clients in more significant ways. We now have amazing social services advocates. We recognized them earlier in the evening as well. And please know that everything you pledge right now will go directly to our clients, and all of the grants of financial assistance made by the Youth Advocacy Foundation to clients will be guided by YAF's mission here. A $100 gift card will go toward a gift card for food. $250 will go toward a phone to stay in communication with their clients, and also just frankly the connectedness that is necessary to operate in the world. $500 can go for clothing, $50 for school supplies, $750 for a computer, which we all need, $100 for just an Uber ride to school or a T-Pass, $1,000 for temporary housing because often our older students are experiencing homelessness without a place to go. $2,500 for an independent education assessment. $5,000 will get you an independent neuropsychological evaluation. So we want to help our clients. Anything you can give makes a difference. And we heard that from our students. So, where's the thermometer at? We are at 3550. Listen, I'm going to bring our poet laureate up here. She might have to do some more convincing. I don't know what else she can do. No, I know. I mean to inspire folks. Edith has given me some much needed stage direction, I guess. I'm not selling it hard enough. All right, so you have an opportunity to continue to give throughout this evening. Thank you all who have donated so far. The silent auction items will still be up for bid through 5 p.m. tomorrow. And help me out, folks. I want to come back next year. You will continue. There we go. All right, let's get lively for a Friday night. All right, well, I'm just hearing some very exciting news. We got a $2,500 donation that we haven't been able to put in so that you see it on the thermometer, but very excited. And you can continue to donate because our silent auction is open until tomorrow at 5 p.m. What a great Mother's Day gift, by the way, as we think about our moms. The gift of an educational experience for a young person. So we're going to move on to dessert. I want you to earn that ice cream while we move from here to there. My name is Crystal Haynes. I appreciate you for allowing me to be here tonight in the room with all of you. And you can catch me, this is a shameless plug, on Greater Boston and Basic Black. So thank you so much for everything that you do. And continue to do the good work. Have a great night.